can see at this time of the year the woods are really lush and green and in full bloom, and at times it can be quite difficult to get yourself some decent tinder when there is much greenery about like this. So something I'll say is get into the habit as soon as you get out of the car for the beginner is start picking up some dry tinder, things like say grass, dry leaves. I find for me sometimes in an area like this I can get last year's dead ferns and they seem to like really well for me. I actually use myself as a Tinder pouch that's attached to my belt, and I'll show you that. So here it is. I've already collected a wee bit this morning. So as I start to walk into the woods, what I'm starting to look for is tufts of dry grass and leaves for my tinder pouch. And like this here, there's some dry leaves, very dry, so I'm saying that I'm not still a bit green, not good enough, so just keep searching. And I like to get the ferns. You see these ferns here are all green, and here we go, here's some leaves. So just your dead leaves like this. Yeah, and you can tell when they're in your hand, they start to actually crumble and start to powder up a bit. They're ideal. So just get a good handful of them and into your pouch. That. It's here. Oh, there you go, there's a fern root system, so take the driest parts of that and just rip that apart. It's dry enough for me. Scrunch that up all day. Right. Ferns there. It's not a lot, but it's enough. And you can see here, the grass, just pick at that. Ideal stuff. And that's as good as I get here. Right, next thing on the agenda is we're looking for dead standing trees, and I've seen one on the road into my camp that I've been needing to pick up, and now's the perfect opportunity when I'm making this fire lay today. And I've got an ideal tree here. So up off the ground, as dry as possible, and some of the branches will be soaking wet. And if you've got as much wood as this here, well, just break off the stuff that's soaking and leave it, or stand it upright for another time. So this is ideal. So here I've dragged this dead standing tree I found in the wood back to my camp, and I've got a good few hours of burn time in this. So what I'll do is I'll break it up. In the ideal world, some of this you can just jump on, it'll snap off, but it's a bit thick at the bottom here, so I'm going to need to sew it up. So here's the start of the fire lay, and the first thing I need to build here and cut to size is the two wind braces that sits on top of the platform that I'm going to be building in a minute. I find the most efficient way to cut through logs this thickness, this is a piece of white elm here, which is approximately 3 inches in diameter. I feel the beaver cut is definitely the most efficient way of cutting through logs this size, rather than chopping, as I find A1's a bit light for that, and it does this with the greatest of ease. So it's a great method to get through larger logs. At this point here, I've put enough cuts into the log that I feel it'll snap, and all you have to do here then, just like I have here, is hit it a couple of times off the log and give it a couple of small chops, and that's you through it. It's a great method for getting through large logs. Next thing in the fire lay is the platform I'm building here. So what I'm trying to do is do some perpendicular cuts through small logs which are approximately about 1 inch in diameter using the E.G.O, and that's just to get all the sticks to the relative same size so the platform is nice and even when you lay it on the ground to build your fire up upon. And the E.G.O again does these cuts no problem whatsoever. When cutting this wood, I cut the wood at approximately a 45-degree angle. One thing I will say is make sure you cut it on a solid surface like I'm here on this tree, and this helps absorb the shock and makes the cut into the wood much deeper and more efficient at getting through it. So this is a great method for someone who's maybe new into bushcraft and is wanting to get a fire lay that is going to work. And this one's always worked for me, so why don't you give this one a try? The next thing I do here is a bit of battening, and this is another piece of white elm which is relatively green, and it was just a piece I had after building my shelter from last week. It was lying on the ground, so I just used it up. I would say make sure when you can to use dead standing wood. It's much more efficient when it comes to lighting. This elm is really fibrous and really quite hard to split, and the A1's really good at it with the swedge it's got on when it comes to splitting, and the battening no problem. But when it's green like this it can be very fibrous, so that's something to be aware of. If you're a beginner, make sure when you can that you have some dead standing wood. Right, the next part in the equation is making yourself some feather sticks. I like to make 3 or 4 of them and have one that's as fine as I can possibly get it, and that's my niter feather stick, the one that's most likely to take to flame from a fire steel. But we've got a big bag of tinder today, so hopefully that'll do. But you can go straight in with the feathers when they're as fine as this, in these small trumpet rolls. Don't know if this is focusing in or not. So 3 to 4 of them you want to get made up, because there's a few times where on the route into wherever you're camping or doing an overnight, you actually won't find any tinder, and this is why we need to batten through wood to get to the dry stuff. And having the ability to do decent feathers so they'll take to light is something you've got to put plenty of practice in. And as the old saying goes, the 7 P's, prior planning and preparation prevents a piss poor performance. So while the weather's good, get the practice done. Right, so there you go. Right, I'll go on with the rest of these and then we'll get to lighting this fire. So here's the fire lay all laid out in preparation to being lit. So we can see here in front of me I have the 2 wind bracers, the 2 large pieces of wood sitting on top of the platform, and at the other side of that I have 3 to 4 feather sticks that I've made up. And then the next thing I have here is my pencil lead size pieces of wood that'll take to light relatively quick. Then I go up to my thumb size, so a good double handful of them. Then I started going to my fuel, so this was a piece of sycamore, and I've broken all the small limbs up, and that's the start of my fuel. So that's approximately wrist size, well slightly smaller, up to wrist size. And then that dead standing tree that I dragged out, that's my large fuel here. So that'll give me a good few hours of burning time. Right, let's get the fire set up, let's see how it goes. First thing then is lay the platform down. We'll get it bedded in. All the branches are roughly cut to size that's required. Right, so there's a platform to start with. Next thing, I like my wind bracers to go on. Set them on top like that. And obviously what they do is protect the wind coming in whatever direction. If it's coming from the camera this way, I can shut it off like this, or I may be required to open it up to let more air in and funnel it to my fire. So that's why you use the braces. Next thing we use is all the dry tinder that we got, and just set that straight on top of the platform. Next part then, the fire steel, and try and get this dry tinder lit. So what I like to do is actually trap the tinder underneath my fire steel, and on this knife here I'm going to use the back to scrape, so a good sharp 90-degree spine. And what I like to do is a pushing method, where I actually push the sparks from the fire steel into it. I don't draw it. Right, so we'll get in, trap it down, get vertical. There we go. Slit straight away. And then what I like to do, feather sticks on top of it. Like that. We've got plenty of time now, it's up and running. Push that in a wee bit. Then what I like to do is just sit these across the top like that and let them catch. Just let the flames come up through. And then next thing we want to go into is our thumb size, roughly thumb thickness. The weather's really good for fires at the moment, so obviously watch what you're doing safety wise. Make sure that you have some water. My water's just at the back of this tree stump here. Right, so that's it come up high enough. Then what I start to do is just place some of my thumb size at a 45-degree to that. Then again lift them up through it. So that's one of the downsides if you're using anything that's relatively green, it can be quite smoky. Right, so I'm happy enough that it's come through there, and then what I do is I just crisp that across it, there, get it on, and I just crisscross and just keep doing that. And what that does is burns through the centre and drops it into the top of the platform. Now you can see the smoke's going towards the camera. What I can do now is start to open it up a bit and let more air in. Flames come up through again before you add anything else on. Right, you can actually hear the water in that greenwood sizzling. So this is why you actually want to be using dead standing branches. Okay, so bear that in mind. But it will burn as long as you prep the wood properly. Right, so once that starts coming through, add on some larger pieces now. There we go. That was all done just with a simple knife. Now time to get the tea on. get the rest of this small fuel put onto the fire. As you can see, it's starting to come through, and there's a larger bed of embers starting to develop there, and that's what I'm looking for. At this point, these flames can be quite large. Right, so that fire is absolutely roasting now, and I've got my brace across here, and while this wood's burning its way through the small fuel, I'll just get a cup on. So I'm hoping this will help the beginners out who are just new into bushcraft, or mum and dad's taking the kids out in the wood. We'll hope the instruction's good enough that you can follow it. And that's all it takes. And as this starts to burn through the small fuel, you add larger and larger, always making sure that you keep it under control. There we go, so there's my water ready and on a rolling boil. So I'll go and get my tea ready. Right, I'll catch you all in my next video. Thanks again for coming on the channel. I appreciate your support. Cheers.